Welcome and thank you for joining today's conference, Fiscal Year 2024 Small Rural School Achievement Grant Application Webinar. Before we begin, please ensure you've opened the WebEx chat panel by using the associated icon on the bottom right corner of your screen. This event is being recorded, and please note that all audience audio connections are on listen-only mode. You may submit written questions throughout the presentation, and these will be addressed during Q&A. To submit a written question, select all panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel and send. There will be several interactive polls for the session. These will launch on the right side of your screen. Go ahead and click the submit button to submit your responses at that time. If you require technical assistance, please send a chat to Inteller Events host. And with that, I will turn the conference over to Leslie Pointer. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. Welcome to our fiscal year 2024 Small School Achievement Grant webinar. We are hosting this as the Rural Education Achievement Program team at the U.S. Department of Education. And we really appreciate you taking the time to join us to learn more about the process for applying for the SRSA grant, the Small Rural School Achievement Grant. I'll go on to the next slide, please. My name is Leslie Pointer, and I serve as the REAP group leader. I am joined today by the entire team, all of my REAP colleagues, Alice Kinney, Eric Schulz, Justin Tabor, Robert Hitchcock, and Stacy Cummins, who all serve as program officers, and Abigail Swisher, who is currently working with our team as the department's Rural Impact Fellow. You're going to have a chance today to hear from all of them. And then just a quick mic check. I am getting some messages that my mic is going in and out. Can I be heard?
Yes, you were going in and out at the beginning, but okay. You're clear now.
Okay, great. So as I was saying, you're going to have a chance to hear from all of my colleagues on the team today as we discuss how to apply for the fiscal year 2024 SRSA funding and cover the key topics to keep in mind when applying and planning to implement the grant. So we'll go ahead to the next slide, please. And on this slide, we're going to get started with just a few basic procedures. First, we are recording today's webinar, and we'll post the recording to the resources page on the REAP website next week so that you have ongoing access to today's presentation should you need to review any of the slides that you see today. As you'll notice, we are going to be dropping the link to our resources webpage in the chat, and we will continue to add helpful links to the team's website into the chat throughout today's presentation. We have muted all attendee lines and turned off participant videos, but we do want you to be able to participate. We ask that you please use the WebEx chat feature to submit any questions that you have for us. And the way to do that is to submit your questions in the chat by selecting all panelists from the drop-down menu. Your questions will then come directly to us rather than being viewable by all of today's attendees, and we will review the questions that we receive and try to answer a few of the most common questions at the end of today's webinar. Many questions may also be answered in the information that you hear during today's presentation. We appreciate your questions, and we will use them to inform our future technical assistance for this year's application as well. If you do have any technical difficulties during the webinar, please send a private chat message to the event producer. And if you're unable to access the chat, you can email our REAP team directly at reap@ed.gov. Let's go ahead to the next slide. And here you'll see our objectives for today's webinar. Up front, I know that the question that is on many of your minds is, how do I apply for this year's grant? And when will I receive my email link to apply? Many of you know that we use an online tool for this application. Our application process is later this year than in the typical grant year, and that is because of a technology change with our application provider, and also because final budget appropriations from Congress have been delayed. We are currently finalizing the application, which should be available very soon and no later than the end of this month. As soon as the application is available, the primary contact at your LEA will receive a link by email to apply. The email will be sent from noreply.survey@connect.gov. We are going to cover all of this in more detail later, but just previewing some of that for you now. As with the past few years of the application, we anticipate that most LEAs will be able to complete the application in less than 30 minutes. Today's webinar is going to walk you through the process so that when you receive your link, you will know how to complete the application. We will also host another webinar opportunity on April 11th. If you have any questions that you'd like us to answer once you receive your link and start the process of applying. You will have until May 10th to complete the application. So now just going quickly to the objectives for today's webinar. We do hope that you'll leave this presentation knowing how to access, complete, and submit the fiscal year 2024 SRSA grant application, maintain an active unique entity identifier or UEI registration in SAM.gov, contact us, the REAP, or the SAM and G5, G6 teams for targeted support, and access additional resources as needed. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. And there you see an agenda showing the topics that we are going to address during today's presentation. For sake of time, I am not going to review in detail all of the items in the agenda, and we are just going to go ahead and keep going. So we'll go to the next slide, please. All right. Throughout today's webinar, we are going to be utilizing the polling feature to engage with you all. So our first question is a very easy one. On your screen, you should see a polling window appear with the following question. Is this your first time completing the online SRSA grant application? You have two options. Please either select yes, this is my first experience working with the SRSA grant, or no, I have applied for the SRSA grant in a previous year. We are going to give everyone a few more seconds to respond to the poll by selecting submit. As we wait, we'll look in the polling window to see how our audience has responded. Understand that as soon as you respond, you're able to see in live time kind of the yes and no. So I'm currently seeing 68. No, this is not their first time, and 32 saying yes. So we'll just leave that poll up, and hopefully you can view that information as it is coming in. We really appreciate that feedback, regardless of whether you've applied for the past 20-something years or if you're brand new. We are glad you are here, and we are here to support you to make sure you understand this process. Okay, we'll go to our last slide then, slide 7, and that slide contains a list of many of the acronyms that you will hear us reference. We will provide these meanings when we reference acronyms throughout our presentation. One you will frequently hear is LEA, which stands for Local Educational Agency. And with that, I am going to turn this conversation to Stacy, who will cover some of the basics about REAP. Thanks, Stacy.
And hi, everyone. Just because we've had some sound issues, quick sound check. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, you sound good.
I can hear you.
Great. Let me know if I start to cut out as well. Okay, so we're going to start by reviewing some of the basics of the REAP program and then get going into things like timeline, eligibility, and use of funds. Next slide, please. I'd like to start with a brief overview of the REAP program. So as you may know, REAP is found in Title V, Part B of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, or the ESEA. The purpose of REAP is to address the unique needs of rural LEAs that frequently lack the personnel and resources needed to compete effectively for federal competitive grants and receive formula grant allocations in amounts often too small to be effective in meeting their intended purposes. REAP consists of two formula grants. The first, which we're here to talk about today, is the Small Rural School Achievement, or SRSA grant, which under SRSA, the department makes more than 4,200 grants annually directly to local educational agencies, or LEAs. So that's you all. Those are our school districts. Second is the Rural and Low Income School, or RLIS grant. Under RLIS, the department makes grants to state educational agencies, or SEAs, with eligible LEAs, and then the SEA actually administers those subgrants to the eligible LEAs. So SRSA, the department administers those grants. RLIS, your SEA administers those grants. Although today we are focused on the application for SRSA, it is important to keep in mind that through REAP, there are two different programs, SRSA and RLIS, that provide funding to rural LEAs. And we're going to talk about dual eligibility, so being eligible for both programs later in my section. Next slide, please. On this slide, you will see the REAP master timeline, which summarizes the main phases of a REAP grantee's interaction with the REAP team at the U.S. Department of Education throughout a year. You'll want to review the information on the bottom of the timeline, which is relevant to LEAs. Information for SEAs, our state educational agencies, is at the top. Also note that the department uses federal fiscal years when making grant awards. Federal fiscal years do not always line up exactly with school years. The federal fiscal year runs from October 1st to September 30 of each year. We are currently in federal fiscal year 2024, which will end September 30th, 2024. So when we talk about fiscal year 2024, again, we're referring to federal fiscal year and not school years. The timeline is broken down into 4 timeframes, including the main grant events happening during those times and what LEAs need to do or know during each event. For example, we just concluded the eligibility determination process, colored in orange, where SEAs submitted REAP eligibility data and LEAs reviewed the master eligibility spreadsheet, or MES, that was generated from the eligibility data. We are now beginning the next part of the REAP grant cycle, the SRSA application season, which is colored in yellow, and again, what we're here to talk about today. During this time, each SRSA-eligible LEA will receive an email with an invitation to complete the application, and dual eligible LEAs, which I'll talk more about shortly, will choose whether to participate in the SRSA or RLIS program. After the application closes, the REAP team will publish an updated MES that includes the final program for each LEA. During this time, LEA should review the MES and confirm their program, especially those dual eligible LEAs and SRSA eligible LEAs who want to confirm that they submitted their application. This is also the time during which you report any contact changes to the REAP team. REAP awards will be made between July 1 and September 2024. If an LEA applied for SRSA, the primary contact, also known as the authorized representative, will receive a grant award notification, or GAN, during this time via email. For those of you who've applied to SRSA in the past, you may notice that the timeline is a little later this year, which Leslie mentioned earlier at the start of this presentation. So we've had some technology updates that delayed the SRSA application process, but we do not anticipate that this will impact the timeline of grant awards. Next slide, please. On the slide, you'll see a timeline of what you can expect over the next few months regarding the SRSA grant-making process in particular. So to start, the fiscal year 2024 SRSA application should open very soon and no later than the end of March 2024. Once open, that invitation email, which allows an eligible LEA to access the application, will be sent to the primary contact listed on the master eligibility spreadsheet, published on the department's website. So you can check that contact information. Eligible LEAs will have until May 10, 2024 to complete and submit their application. Once SRSA grant funds are awarded to eligible LEAs who completed the SRSA application, they will become available in G5, G6 on or after July 1st, 2024. Next slide, please. SRSA awards have a 27-month performance period. So now we're talking about once an award has actually been made on or after July 1st. Here you can see the important dates for the fiscal year 2023 grant period, which was last year. So if you received an award last summer, the summer of 2023, that's the fiscal year 23 award, and fiscal year 24, which is our current grant cycle. So you can see both of those on this slide. And you can see how between cycles, these dates are consistent year to year. The fiscal year 2024 SRSA awards performance period will start on July 1st, 2024, and end on September 30th, 2025. An LEA must make any obligations, so spend those SRSA funds by September 30, 2025. At the end of the performance period, LEAs have an additional 120 days to make any final drawdowns in the G5, G6 system. This is known as the liquidation deadline and is set for January 30th, 2026. Please keep in mind the difference between obligation and liquidation. Obligation is the legally binding agreement to spend the SRSA funds. For example, an invoice would count as an obligation. Well, liquidation is drawing down the obligated funds from the G5, G6 system. So again, take a look at that slide to look at the dates, the deadlines for 2023, so last year, and 2024, which is what we will award this summer. We're starting July 1. Next slide, please. Here we will shift away from talking about timelines and start talking about eligibility. On this slide, you can see the criteria that an LEA must meet to be eligible to receive an SRSA award. As the name implies, an LEA must be both small and rural to be considered eligible for the Small Rural School Achievement Program. For an LEA to be considered small, it must have a total average daily attendance, or ADA, of less than 600 students, or serve schools that are located in counties with a population density of fewer than 10 persons per square mile. And you can see that criteria is in the green box on this slide. To be considered rural, each of the schools within the LEA must have a locale code of 41, 42, or 43. This code is assigned by the department's National Center for Education Statistics, or NCES. An LEA may also be considered rural if it is defined so by the state. Next slide, please. The other program under REAP is the Rural and Low Income School Program. Like SRSA, the name is indicative of the two major eligibility requirements. So to be considered rural and to be considered low income, you are eligible for the Rural and Low Income School Program. Like SRSA, the program rural designations are determined by NCES locale codes. These are slightly different than SRSA. RLIS eligible codes are 32, 33, 41, 42, or 43. To be considered low income, 20% or more of the children ages 5 to 17 served by the LEA must be from families with incomes below the poverty line, based on data from the U.S. Census Bureau Small Area Income and Poverty Estimates, otherwise known as SAPE. When SAPE data is not available, an SEA may provide the same state-derived equivalent of SAPE data that the state uses to make allocations under Part A of Title I of the ESEA. And we use that data to make the RLIS eligibility determination. We're going to talk about this later in the presentation, but I just want to note that all of this data, so an LEA's locale code, its SAPE data, all of this is available in the REAP Master Eligibility Spreadsheet, or MES. Next slide, please. This slide shows all of the National Center on Education Statistics, or NCES locale codes that we've been discussing as a part of both RLIS and SRSA eligibility. Each box shows the NCES locale code that is currently used to determine rurality. RLIS is highlighted in the red box and SRSA in the green box. As you can see, the rurality requirement for RLIS eligibility is more expansive than SRSA and includes that 32 and 33 locale codes. Those LEAs that have a locale code of 41, 42, or 43 may be dual eligible. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've been talking about dual eligibility. We really want to make sure that that you as an LEA know if you are dual eligible or not. This will impact your SRSA application process. In many cases, an LEA can meet the requirements for both the SRSA and RLIS program. This year, we have about 1,500 LEAs who meet the eligibility requirements for, again, both SRSA and RLIS, and we consider those LEAs dual eligible. Please note that a dual eligible LEA can only receive funds under one of the two programs in a given fiscal year. So each year, a dual eligible LEA can only receive funds under either SRSA or RLIS. The chart on this slide shows how LEAs that are eligible for both SRSA and RLIS, again, these dual eligible LEAs, overlap. An LEA that has a locale code of 41, 42, or 43, or is designated as rural by the state, may be eligible for either or both SRSA and RLIS if they meet the other requirements for that program. So dual eligible LEA, again, if they are eligible for both, have to meet the low income and the small criteria as well as the rural criteria. Dual eligible LEAs with a positive estimated SRSA allocation, so meaning an estimated allocation above $0, receive an SRSA application. Justin will talk more about the SRSA application invitation email shortly, but we'd also like to note here that the invitation email containing the link to the SRSA application contains an estimate of what the LEA could receive under both SRSA and RLIS if the LEA is dual eligible. We provide this information to help an LEA make an informed choice about which program it decides to participate in. So LEAs have a choice whether to participate in SRSA or RLIS, dual eligible LEAs. The estimated allocation for dual eligible LEAs are also listed in the master eligibility spreadsheet in addition to the invitation email. To further help an LEA decide between the two programs, the REAP team has updated the considerations for dual eligible LEAs page on our website, which will also be linked in the chat. So how does an LEA inform the department of which program they would like to participate in, right? If you're a dual eligible LEA, we provide the information, the estimated allocations for both SRSA and RLIS, but how do you decide which program to participate in? If an LEA wants to participate in the SRSA program, it must submit an SRSA application. If an LEA wants to participate in the RLIS program, it should not submit an SRSA application. We consider the SRSA application the choice of participation in SRSA. So not submitting an SRSA application will automatically notify the department that your LEA is choosing to participate in the RLIS program. In that case, the LEA should reach out to their SEA to follow those application procedures. All right, next slide, please. Now that we've talked about eligibility, let's talk about how REAP funds can be used, including the various flexibilities available to small rural LEAs receiving REAP funds. We will also spend some time looking at example uses of funds later in the presentation when we discuss the application process. First, REAP funds can be used for a variety of activities that are allowable under different title programs, which are outlined on this slide, offering flexibility in how LEAs may use their REAP funds. Note that the left side of this chart includes allowable uses of SRSA funds, and the right side is RLIS specific. If your LEA is dual eligible, you may want to consider the different allowable activities under SRSA versus RLIS as you decide which program is right for your LEAs. Additionally, an SRSA LEA can change its uses of SRSA funds anytime during the 27-month performance period, as long as the uses of funds are still allowable under SRSA. So please keep that in mind when we talk about uses of funds in the application later. Please note that if there's a fully virtual school within your LEA, SRSA funds cannot be used for activities related to that fully virtual school. We have recently updated our website's resources related to allowable uses of funds. We will include the link in the chat and encourage you to explore this resource for further details or examples of allowable uses of funds. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this slide. We will include it for everyone's awareness, but this is the Alternative Fund Use Authority, or AFWA, which is a flexibility for SRSA-eligible LEAs that allows them to use Title II Part A and Title IV Part A funds for activities that are allowable under SRSA. So if you have any questions about AFWA, please reach out to reapit@gov or check our resources on our website. Next slide, please. Okay, we have a quick poll here before I pass it over to Justin. For this poll, our questions are about eligibility. Can we start? Okay, great. Looks like that poll is getting started. So your options are going to be, first, my LEA is only eligible for SRSA. Second, my LEA is eligible for both SRSA and RLIS, meaning it is dual eligible. Or third, I am not sure what my LEA's eligibility is. I am just seeing a spinning wheel. I'm wondering if other folks can see the poll.
You just have to do an answer.
It looks like my LEA is only eligible for the SRSA grant program. Is more than half of you answered that. And then we do have some dual eligibles, about a quarter of participants. And for the 20% of you that don't know what your eligibility is, we would be happy to help you. I recommend taking a look at the master eligibility spreadsheet to start. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Justin to lead us through the application.
Thanks, Stacy. We're going to go into the next part of the webinar, which is a walkthrough of the SRSA application. So we can go on to the next slide, please. So as was mentioned before, your SRSA application will be distributed via an invitation email, which is going to come from the U.S. Department of Education, specifically from the email address no-reply.survey@connect.gov. And your LEA's primary contact, which is listed on the MES, will receive that email by the end of March. The invitation email will contain identifying information about your LEA, such as the name, the address, estimated award allocations, just like you see in the screenshot here. Most importantly, this email contains the LEA's unique application link, and clicking that link is going to take you into the Connect survey platform, which is where the application is housed. And towards the bottom of that email, you will find a list of useful links and resources that you can use to prepare yourself before beginning the application. So if you have questions or need to review anything, check those resources out. Once you click that link, that's going to take you into the application, and you can continue to use that link over and over again if you lose connection, you time out, or you just need to, start it one day and come back the next day. Maybe you do a little bit during your lunch over a couple days, totally fine. Do remember to check your spam folder of the primary contact listed on the MES or the master eligibility spreadsheet if your LEA does not receive an application invitation email by the end of March. You can only submit your application once. So once you hit submit, you are locked into your answers. So do be aware of that. Let's go to the next slide, please. So after you click that unique link, you will be taken to the welcome page, and it has instructions like it mentions here on the screenshot. It also says here that you will need about 10 to 30 minutes in order to complete the application. You do have the option to leave the survey and return by clicking the same link, and that will jump you back into the last question you answered. Okay, next slide, please. So the first questions on the application require checking the contact information that we have listed for your LEA. So the information provided to us by your state educational agency will be auto-populated into the application. And just like the email invitation, this includes the name, the address, and the phone number. If that information is correct, you can click yes and proceed. If the information is not correct, you'll click no, which will then allow you to update information that is incorrect. Just note that you're only required to provide the corrected information. You don't need to refill out things that are correct. So if someone's last name, or if someone has moved on and you need to fix a name, you only need to do the name. If the phone number is still the same, you don't need to put that same phone number in for us again. Remember that as you're completing this, REAP requires 2 different contact people for each LEA. So please ensure that as you're completing the application, 2 different individuals are listed as the primary and the secondary on this screen. Next slide, please. Next, you'll be asked to provide and/or verify your LEA's unique entity identifier, or UEI number. Now, as a reminder, the UEI is the primary means of entity identification for federal awards across the government. As in previous years, we have pre-populated the UEI into the application for any LEA currently registered in the System for Awards Management, or SAM.gov. However, we only pre-populate the UEI if your LEA has previously provided the UEI to REAP. If your LEA's UEI is not pre-populated, then the individual completing this application will need to enter the UEI number provided to you by SAM.gov. At this point in the application, you'll then want to read the instructions to proceed with one of the following 3 options. So if the UEI in the field provided where that red arrow is, if that's correct, you can say, yes, that's correct, and proceed to the next question. If the UEI provided in the field is not correct, you can update that field by typing it in and then fixing the error and then hit next. If the field is blank, REAP doesn't have a UEI on file for your LEA. If your LEA has a UEI registered in SAM.gov, type it into the field and keep going. If your LEA does not have a UEI at this time, you could leave the survey to pause your work and come back to the application later once you have gone to SAM.gov and requested your UEI number. And as a reminder, UEIs are free to receive, so you shouldn't be asked for money for that. Once you have your UEI number, you could resume the application. And as a reminder, an LEA will need a UEI that is registered and active in SAM.gov in order to ultimately receive their SRSA funds in G6. Next slide, please. In this next section of the application, you will be providing a GEPA statement. So Section 427 of the General Education Provision Act, or GEPA, requires departmental grantees, such as SRSA grantees, to describe the steps that the grantee will take to ensure equitable access to and participation in the federally assisted program by addressing the special needs of students, teachers, and other program beneficiaries. This provision allows the applicant discretion in developing the required description. The statute provides 6 barriers that can impede equitable access or participation, and those are gender, race, national origin, color, disability, or age. Based on your local circumstances, an LEA should determine whether these or other barriers may prevent students, teachers, or other program beneficiaries from equitable access or participation in the federally funded project or activity. If your LEA submitted a GEPA statement as part of the FY2023 SRSA application, a copy of that statement will be displayed in the box on the page. You can see where that should populate based on the screenshot. You can review your LEA's previous year GEPA statement thoroughly and see if it still meets the requirements and if it still seems an accurate GEPA statement for your LEA. If that box is blank, you will need to compose a new GEPA statement this year. Next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about GEPA, and we'll just delve into the requirement a bit more. So first, a GEPA statement is an explanation of how your LEA will ensure equitable access to and participation in the SRSA program by addressing barriers that can impede equitable access and participation. The statute highlights 6 types of barriers that it can impede access or participation. That's gender, race, national origin, color, disability, or age. But those are not the only barriers. Your LEA could determine other barriers that prevent students, teachers, or other program beneficiaries from having that level of access. And so you could write beyond one of those 6 barriers. Next slide, please. So we've gone over the GEPA statement that you'll be typing in. So let's look at our intended use of funds question. And this really is probably our most noticeable change this year. In previous years, REAP has collected an intended use of fund as a narrative statement. But this year we're pivoting to a more data-focused approach by using checkboxes like you see in the screenshot here. We are hopeful that this approach is going to be faster for you to complete. When designing this question, we looked at historical trends and uses of REAP funds and have cultivated a list that we think it's flexible and complete enough to capture all of your ideas. As such, it is required that you select at least one of these boxes, but you may also choose to select more than one boxes, and we're going to look at some examples here in just a moment to see what that might look like. One thing we want to be very clear about with this question is that this is an intended use of funds, and I really want to highlight that word intended. By selecting any one or more of these boxes, that does not represent a binding commitment to spend SRSA funds in that manner. To underscore this non-binding nature, the way you respond to this question will not populate in the summary that you receive at the end of the application. If knowing how your LEA replied to this question is important to you all, please make sure that you take note of your response when completing the application. In general, an LEA may use SRSA funds to pay for activities that are allowable under Title I Part A, Title II Part A, Title III, Title IV Part A, and Title IV Part B of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. SRSA funds must be used to supplement and not supplant any other federal, state, or local educational funds. All uses of SRSA funds must be reasonable and necessary and comply with all requirements of the Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards, or the Uniform Guidance, which is located in 2 CFR Part 200. While an LEA is not required to use SRSA funds for activities, it notes on the application checkboxes, as this question represents an LEA's intended uses of funds, LEAs are required and responsible for ensuring that SRSA funds are only used for allowable activities. For more information on allowable uses of SRSA funds, our team has an updated guide to using Rural Education Achievement Program funds that you can find on our website, and it should also be in the link. It should be a link in the chat for you now. So let's go to the next slide and look at some examples of how to use this new question. So on this slide, we can see an example where the LEA has chosen one box, and the box they picked is for technology devices. Our data shows that this is one of the most popular uses of funds. Computer and other pieces of technology are really popular. And as the LEA has selected one box, this is a very acceptable answer. Let's go to the next slide. In the second example, we see another single checkbox, and this time the LEA has selected professional development. We would accept this answer as one box is selected, and that's totally fine. Let's go on to and look at one last example, which is two boxes checked. And here you'll see it's professional development and staff compensation. Now, it is very okay that the LEA has chosen two boxes. There are some ways, there are two ways in which we would encourage you to use multiple boxes. So on the one hand, this could demonstrate that this LEA is potentially using two distinct uses with their funds. So this LEA may do some professional development, and they may do some staff compensation as two totally separate projects. So they've selected two boxes to represent those two projects. Very okay. Alternatively, we might read this as saying that they've selected the second box to describe a single project that overlaps across multiple fields. So we could interpret this as saying maybe this is an LEA's having a main use of funds as staff compensation, and they will be using professional development as part of that compensation package, right? Those are two kind of ideas where you might select two boxes, okay? Again, you have to pick one, and we hope that you are choosing the one that matches most closely to how your LEA intends to use its SRSA funds. Next slide, please. As we near the end of the application, you'll need to read through the assurances and respond to several prompts to proceed. When ready, the applicant LEA will agree to assurances, click the date to populate the date, and then provide an electronic signature by typing the authorized representative's name in the box. You may then proceed to the next section of the application where you're going to review all the responses prior to submitting. Next slide. Lastly, you will get to that final page with a big submit button, and after you hit submit, you will be able to close out the web browser. Next slide, please. After you click submit, you will be taken to a confirmation page that looks kind of like this screenshot here. The LEA's primary contact will receive, who received that initial email is also going to receive the confirmation email. So that means even if someone else on your staff is completing the application, that confirmation email is going to go to the primary contact who got the initial invitation. So don't be surprised, if you're in that kind of situation and you are not the primary contact, just make sure the primary contact gets that confirmation email. This email will include a confirmation of the information provided throughout the application, except for that non-binding response to the use of funds question. The confirmation email will also include important reminders about the UEI requirements, SAM.gov, G5, and the SRSA grant-making timeline. As a reminder, this confirmation email may go to your spam folder, so we really recommend checking spam, junk, trash, all of those kind of folders to make sure that you did not miss that confirmation email. Make sure you retain a copy of your confirmation email if you are the primary contact. If the primary contact for your LEA needs to be updated, we recommend, and I saw this as a question, a few of you were asking, how can we update our primary contact? If the primary contact for your LEA needed to be updated, we recommend that you save the confirmation page after completing the application by printing or screenshotting the confirmation page. If you have trouble confirming with your SRSA application has been submitted, please follow the instructions that we put in the chat now. There's going to be some instructions for confirming that your application was received. If you need to change any of the information provided in your application after it has been submitted, contact us immediately using reap@ed.gov. That's REAP@ed.gov. To wrap up this section, we're going to do another poll for you. So let's look at that. So our poll question here is loading on my end. Give it a second. Okay, 30-second pop quiz. If you can't find that confirmation email, what should you do? Should you perform the electric slide? Should you email reap@ed.gov? Should you look to that post-application information PDF because it has all the same information? % of you are wild and want to do that electric slide. Kudos to you. If you do want to do the electric slide, I encourage you to do that at any point in time. Always a fun way to spend the day. But it looks like a lot of people would, if they couldn't find their confirmation email, would reach out to reap@ed.gov to request a copy. You could also, an equally acceptable answer, a great answer, is to look at that post-application information document. It has almost all of the same information in it. So it's sort of a trick question in that you could pick either one of those and you'd be in a pretty good safe bet. With that, my time with you is over. It has been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm going to pass over to Eric. I'm sorry, I'm going to pass over to Robert. My bad, I can read. I'm going to pass to Robert, who's going to talk to you about the master eligibility spreadsheet.
There we go. Thanks, Justin. It's great to be here with everybody. So for this next section of today's webinar, we're going to dive right into the master eligibility spreadsheet, or the MES as we refer to it. The MES serves as REAP's online public spreadsheet. It's posted beginning in mid-January of each year. So let's go straight into it. Next slide, please. So what is the MES? Well, it shows all LEAs in the nation. Each LEA's REAP eligibility status, which includes the dual eligibility status, and includes the estimated award amounts for eligible REAP grant programs. The criteria data used to determine the LEA's eligibility status, including the title programs that feed into our SRSA formula, and the general contact information for each LEA. So prior to the application season, we requested all state educational agencies, SEAs, and LEAs, local educational agencies, to review the data in the MES. And today we want to highlight how you can reference this data to better understand how we use it to determine program eligibility for your LEA. So next slide, please. So to access the MES, you can go to our SRSA eligibility page, which we'll have on the slide, and Abigail is now placing a link into the chat. And from this page, you can access the FY24, so fiscal year 2024, this year's MES, as well as the older master eligibility spreadsheets from prior fiscal years. So next slide, please. So once you've opened the Excel spreadsheet, the MES contains 4 tabs, which you can see here at the red box at the bottom of the slide. The data dictionary does give you a good definition and data source for every column on the data on the spreadsheets themselves. The summary tab is a breakdown of all LEAs by state and their REAP eligibility. The Hold Harmless tab has data specific to the small number of LEAs who are hold harmless, and you can check that tab if you do have any questions. and of course, the eligibility all LEA tabs. And I'm going to spend the remainder of my presentation discussing the eligibility all LEAs tab and how to review that information there. So next slide, please. When you first access the all LEAs tab, it can be quite overwhelming with information, but there are 4 distinct parts that we'll explore. And before we do, just to note that each of these menu headers at the top actively link to the appropriate section of the data dictionary tab that it describes. So you can always click on one of those links, be taken to the data dictionary for a description of what is in that column. So back to the sections. So the first of these parts is mainly just the LEA identifiers. So columns A through K are where you can find your NCS ID. So again, that's the National Center for Education Statistics ID, which is an important key to how we track LEAs. Next, we have the state ID, the LEA name, address, and phone number, and you can find your agency type, whether or not there's a virtual designation, and if your LEA is listed as newly opened under the future LEAs column. So make sure you verify that all of this information is correct. Next slide, please. So the second section refers to the REAP eligibility. So columns L through R, you can find information related to SRSA, RLIS, and hold harmless. And for those who are eligible for SRSA and either RLIS or hold harmless, you'll be listed as dual eligible in column O. So beside the program eligibility, you can see estimates of your SRSA and RLIS awards in columns P and Q where appropriate. So remember that these are just estimates, and they will be the same estimates you receive in your application email, but until awards are made, we won't have final numbers for what those your final award will be. So finally, column R. Column R is our tracking column for SRSA applications. On a weekly basis, the REAP team will update this spreadsheet online to reflect which LEAs have completed their SRSA application. So if your application has been received, you'll see the word yes in column R. And we ask that you please allow a full week for us to verify your application submission before checking the status on the MES. Next slide, please. So this third section is the data for eligibility determination. This is how we determine whether or not you're eligible for SRSA, RLIS, or hold harmless. So columns T and through Y, you'll find the data that informed each LEA's eligibility, which includes important pieces of data like your locale code determinations, your SRSA rural definitions, your average daily attendance, your county population density, and the poverty metrics. So these are the measures that are listed for eligibility for SRSA and RLIS, so do please make sure you verify that this data is accurate. Columns Z and AA are your FY22, which is your school year 22-23. So your FY22 Title 2A and Title 4A amounts are recorded. These were given to us by your state and are used in the calculation of your SRSA award, so please do make sure that those look correct. If you do believe that any piece of information has been reported incorrectly, we ask that you bring this to the attention of your state coordinator, and we're going to post a link to the state coordinators here right now. Your states will then inform the department that data needs to be updated. And next slide here. So lastly, we have columns AB and AE. These fields contain the names of your primary and secondary LEA contacts. So like the other sections of the MES, we also encourage you to check on this for accuracy, and remember that the primary contact is the one who will be contacted with a link to your application. So we have one final poll here for you real quick today, so please turn your attention to the polling window now, and that will be available on your screen. And for this last one, we'd just like you to respond to the following question. How confident are you, or do you feel, in locating the FY24 MES online and finding your LEA's data? So there's 4 answers for this poll, so take a moment to read each one and determine where you fall on the spectrum. And of course, make sure to submit after you've made your answer selection. So I'm seeing a pretty good percentage, roughly 60% are highly confident, and another 35% are pretty confident. For about the 10% who's a little unsure, no idea, please do make sure that you follow the link to the page. Go ahead and explore, and if you do have any questions, you can submit those to reap@ed.gov. So after that, I am going to pass this over to Eric, who will talk about our next steps.
Thank you, Robert, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for sticking with us this afternoon. We're going to spend the next few slides just as a quick review of a lot of the important information that all of our presenters have talked about today. And this will give you hopefully a quick summary and be able to focus you on your next steps regarding the grant as well as the resources. So let's go to that next slide, please. All right. The primary contact, as we've mentioned before, for each SRSA-eligible LEA is going to receive soon that personalized application invitation email from us here at the department. Again, as Justin mentioned, no-reply.survey@connect.gov. We want you to take a special note of this address because it is not a standard Department of Education email that you'll get from us. So it's very possible it may not be recognized on your end. So if that person who's listed as your primary contact doesn't get that information email in their inbox, as we mentioned, please be sure to check your spam or your junk folders, okay? Now, if you are not sure who your LEA's primary contact is, and again, we've seen emails about this or messages about this in the chat. If you're not sure who that contact is, check the master eligibility spreadsheet, which Robert just walked you through. We're going to have that link put up here in the chat now. And again, this spreadsheet is going to also be linked at the resources section at the end of this presentation. Now, we've seen another couple messages here about who's the contact and forwarding the primary contact information. Who's ever listed as that primary contact has the option to forward that information to your bookkeeper, to your business manager, to whomever you determine wants to fill out this application. So if there's someone else at your LEA who wants to complete that application, they can do that. Again, but you'll need to know that the name, the email listed as that primary contact is the person who's going to receive the confirmation email, okay? And if that listed primary contact is not able to forward the email, let us know at reap@ed.gov and request a change and we can get that squared away for you. All right. Let's go to the next slide, please. What you're looking at here, we just want to lay this out and summarize the relationship between SAM and our G5, G6 situation here, the grant management system. We've got two federal systems in which you as an SRSA grantee must be set up in order to access those awarded funds under the SRSA program once you submit the application. G5, G6, and SAM.gov. Now, late last year, the department rolled out an upgrade of the existing, what we used to be known as G5, the grant management system. They now call that G6. The intent here was to improve the functionality of the grant management system with a minimal change into what you on your end as users see when you access the system. So you're going to see those terms G5 and G6 bandied about back and forth. We're basically talking about the same thing, whether we say G5 or G6, okay? So when we talk about this, it's the Department of Education's grant management system, and it's where the funds, the awarded grant funds that we make to each of your LEAs, that's where that money stays until you initiate the electronic funds transfer to draw down those funds into your district's bank account, okay? So what's going to need to happen if you haven't already done this, someone in your district, whether it's your superintendent, business manager, whoever, is going to need what's known as payee access in order to draw down those grant funds that we've awarded you, okay? The next item in this sequence is SAM. So any entity that does business with the federal government, whether we're talking about a multi-million-dollar defense contractor, McDonnell Douglas or whomever, Lockheed, whether it's a multi-million-dollar defense contractor or it's a small remotely located district such as you, everybody doing business with the federal government has to be annually registered and verified with the federal government. And this is done through that System for Award Management, or SAM as we call it. We love our acronyms out here. SAM keeps track of every such entity. And the way they do that is through that alphanumeric code called the Unique Entity Identifier, or the UEI, okay? So if you don't already have a UEI set up for your district, in order to have that number assigned to your LEA, a designated person on your team, again, it could be the superintendent, could be the business manager, could be whoever, has to have the role of entity administrator. That entity administrator is the one who will do the registration and who will do the annual renewal of that registration in order to keep that UEI active so that you have access to your grant funds in the G6 system. So each year, you as grantees, that entity administrator will need to get into the habit of renewing that UEI and also confirming that someone in your district has the payee role in the G6 system. So once SAM is set up, SAM informs the Department of Ed, and that allows the money to flow to your district, okay? Again, it's also a good idea when we talk about this is to review your district's banking information in G6 to ensure, again, that there are no delays in your ability to access that money when you're ready to make a drawdown. So if you're interested in learning more about SAM and the UEI process, we're inviting you to join us for a webinar next Thursday, the 28th, March 28th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. During that webinar, we're going to have some folks from SAM who will present to you about the UEI registration process. And this is specifically targeted towards small rural LEAs. Okay, and we're going to post a link to that webinar in the chat right now. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. All right, what you see here, let me make sure. Yeah, this is a screenshot. What we're looking at now is the sam.gov website where you will go to renew your UEI registration. And please note, as you can see flagged on this screenshot, this whole process of setting up and renewing, either registering or renewing a UEI in SAM, it's absolutely free. Please, 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 we have people call us every year about this. Don't fall for any sales pitches or pressure tactics from people that may try to charge you a fee for maintaining that UEI in SAM. If you work through SAM directly, it's absolutely free. So don't let them shake you down for any money to get this done. You also see here that there are 3 options that allow you to register for UEI, to renew your UEI, or to check the status of your entity, okay? So keep in mind, again, we can't emphasize this enough because we have people who have trouble accessing UEIs and issues. That UEI has to be renewed annually in SAM in order to access those funds. So you can use that sam.gov check entity status button to find out the status of your SAM registration. And clicking that button will take you to the entity status tracker, okay? Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, we're going to give you a brief rundown on how to use that SAM entity status tracker. Basically, there are 4 possible status updates that you can receive from the sam.gov entity status tracker. And the recommended next steps are there for each message. If you get that active message, that means your LEA's UEI is active and registered. You're good to go. Nothing else is required at that point. It's also good to note here the date when that UEI will expire so that you'll be prepared to renew it when the time comes. The next status is called a work in progress status. That's a tracker will often give you instructions on the specific step of that SAM registration process that you still need to work on. So we recommend that you follow those instructions promptly to get that resolved. Now, if you see the inactive or mandatory errors notice, we recommend that you contact SAM directly because you're likely going to need to submit some additional information and materials to get that squared away. Now, if you need additional support to update your sam.gov registration, contact SAM directly. You can go to the Federal Service Desk, or what we call the FSD, by using the fsd.gov live chat. We're going to copy that link into the chat right now. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, what we have here now, this slide, this is a look at our updated our updated REAP, the quick links document. This is our comprehensive resource that covers many of the topics that we've walked you through in today's presentation. We've got detailed information there on SRSA eligibility, how to use your grant funds, the REAP informational document, as well as links to SAM and G5/G6. We've worked really hard to try and listen to the feedback we've received from you and all of our partners throughout the country. We worked really hard to update a number of these resources, in particular that REAP Use of Funds Guide. It's now formatted as an interactive tool. You can use that tool to find examples of allowable ways to spend SRSA and RLIS funds. Additionally, the considerations for dual eligible LEAs and the UEI support guide pages have also been refreshed. So hopefully this is going to be a one-stop shop for you to get detailed information and additional guidance on all of the things that we brought up today. The Quick Links document is accessible online from the REAP Resources webpage. So take a look at the chat now for the link to that Quick Links document. Again, we want you to keep in mind, we are here as the REAP team to reach out to us. Feel free to reach out at reap@ed.gov for additional assistance. You all as educators know that the only silly questions are the ones that aren't asked. So we're here to help support you with this. And before we wrap up the webinar today, we're going to check the chat again for any questions that you may have submitted during the presentation. All right. Next slide, please, Alice. I'm going to turn it over to you for questions from the chat. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thank you, Eric. I do want to recognize we are at 2:01. I know the scheduled time to end our webinar today was 2 o'clock, so we do understand if folks have to hop off. However, we're going to make a slight adjustment, bring in our Rural Impact Fellow, Abigail Swisher, for a quick announcement, and then we will follow up with an additional few minutes of an optional Q&A where we will respond to the questions that have already been posted in the chat. So Abigail, let's go to you. And if folks in the audience are able to stay on for an additional 10 minutes, we would love to have you, and we will cover many of the questions you've asked today. Abigail?
Thank you, Alice. Can we go to the next slide, please? Perfect. Well, so thank you all for being willing to stay on for just another minute because we have one additional opportunity to share with you. Right now, our team is working to highlight some strong examples of the important work that our grantees are doing to support all students. And some of you may already be familiar with Secretary Cardona's Raise the Bar, Lead the World agenda, which sets out a shared vision and a commitment from the federal government to help states and local communities achieve academic excellence, boldly improve learning conditions, create global pathways for engagement, and increase college affordability and completion. And if not, I'm going to drop actually a link into the chat so that you can check that out. But I wanted to share with you all that we are particularly looking right now to collect stories from our rural districts who are doing work in a few key focus areas that are part of this agenda. We're particularly interested right now in raising up examples of our rural districts who are working to support learning recovery, to improve student mental health and well-being, and those that are doing innovative work to recruit and retain educators. So if your district or school is doing work that you want to celebrate and that you think others could benefit from learning about, please be in touch with me. You can send me a really brief email at the address listed on the next slide, and I'll likely reach out to you with further questions. We're hoping to feature some of your stories in our forthcoming newsletters, blogs, web features, and webinars if we can. So I do really hope you'll be in touch. Thank you all for staying over. I'm going to turn it over to Alice now for Q&A. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Abigail. Really interesting information that we hope you all are able to use and look into a little bit more. Again, a webinar has officially ended, so please, if you do have to run, we understand. However, if any of you are able to stay for Q&A from the questions that we have received in the chat, please do. I'm going to jump right into those and start with a common question that we are receiving. Is the SRSA application currently open? So again, to reemphasize, it is not yet open. No one has yet received their application invitation email, but please do keep a very keen eye out for your information or invitation email coming in the very near future. We expect that to be out in the next few days or next week. So keep an eye out and we will be in touch soon when it is available. The next question we received is, when will an updated master eligibility spreadsheet, also known as our MES, become available online? So we are working quickly, as soon as possible, to get a final version of the master eligibility spreadsheet posted onto our REAP eligibility webpage. Throughout the application window, we do update our master eligibility spreadsheet on a weekly basis. So just a quick reminder, do not download and save a copy of the master eligibility spreadsheet and reference back weeks later. It will be out of date. So you should always take a look online, our REAP website, to find the most up-to-date version of the master eligibility spreadsheet. Next up, another question related to our master eligibility spreadsheet. How do we update contacts listed for your school district or LEA? Now, we have talked about this in today's webinar, but just to reemphasize, it is very important that our team here at the U.S. Department of Education maintains 2 up-to-date contact people for your school district. If there is a change, please just email us directly at reap@ed.gov as soon as possible. The primary contact will be the person who receives the SRSA application invitation email if your district is SRSA eligible. So we want to make sure that person is actively working at the school, is the correct contact person for your LEA. And if it's not, we'd be happy to get that updated as soon as you reach out to us. Of course, anytime you contact us at reap@ed.gov, it is important to include your district's name as well as your state, and of course, the request that you are making. A related question, does the primary contact have to be the superintendent of the school district? So the answer is no. Many of our LEAs will actually list a business manager as the primary contact and have the superintendent as the secondary contact. There is no right or wrong way to do this, just whatever works best for your district. The main thing is that both of the people listed are accurate, current employees who are the 2 best people to be in charge of the SRSA grant for your school. I want to jump ahead to a question we received about dual eligible LEAs. So again, dual eligible means that a district is eligible for both the SRSA grant and the RLIS grant in the same fiscal year. You have to choose between the 2. You cannot apply to both. If we receive your SRSA application, we will place you into the SRSA cohort. If we do not receive an SRSA application from a dual eligible LEA, you will automatically be placed into the RLIS cohort. A quick reminder, many of our dual eligible LEAs use the estimated allocations for each program, which we provide on the master eligibility spreadsheet, to make their decision. If you have questions about being dual eligible, you can always reach us at reap@ed.gov, and we're happy to provide support. I think we have one more question in our allotted time here, and that is, should we check all of the uses of funds boxes on the SRSA application if we aren't sure what we plan to do with those funds? So we are going to say no. Just take your best guess, an educated guess, at the top 1, 2, or 3 uses of funds that you plan for this SRSA grant. If you don't know, just select the one that most closely aligns with what you think at the time. Again, as Justin mentioned, checking a box on the SRSA application is not a legally binding commitment. You are welcome, and many districts do change their use of funds throughout the grant cycle, and you don't even have to inform us. We have our updated uses of funds guide online to give you lots of ideas of allowable uses of funds for SRSA and RLIS, and we certainly encourage you to reach out with any questions. I think that has covered a good majority of the questions we received today. We do encourage you to reach out to us with anything we can help with, any other questions that were not answered. I'm going to pause here and turn it over to the REAP group leader, Leslie Pointer, one more time to close us out of today's webinar. And just want to say thank you to all for the great participation in the chat and the polls today. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Alice. Great job with answering some of the questions. I know that we had more questions than that come in, and I just want everyone to know that we are certainly going to use those questions to inform our future technical assistance. We will have another webinar opportunity that we are planning for April 11th. So hopefully that will be after you have received your link to apply. And if you have questions that come up while you're working through the application, that will be another opportunity to come and join us for a live webinar too. We also certainly know questions come up at any time. So always please feel free to reach out to our team at reap@ed.gov. We're actively looking at that inbox, responding to questions, and we just look forward to supporting you through this year's application process, making sure you have everything you need to make an informed decision for your LEA and to receive these grant funds to do great work in your school districts too. So thanks again, everyone. That's going to conclude today's webinar. And there were lots of questions about the slides and the recording. As we put into the chat, that information will be available as soon as possible on the REAP resources page on our website too. So thanks again. We hope you'll join us either next week for the UEI webinar or on April 11th if you're still needing support from our team. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Good one.
Bye, everyone.
All right, that concludes our conference, and you may now disconnect.